Rob, I love it. I absolutely love it. When there's a
Oh,
movie coming out that I think sounds like a dumb idea and I think it's going to be terrible, and then you go into the theater and you really enjoy it. You live for those pleasant
yes.
surprises. You know what I mean? Absolutely live for
Agreed.
those. One of those films, now it doesn't happen often, but one of those films for me was Creed. I actually thought Creed was a bad idea. I thought, okay, a Rocky movie where Rocky isn't the main guy. Wow, sounds fabulous. Even though Ryan Coogler was directing, even though Michael B. Jordan was going to be in it, I still did, but I loved it. Now, Creed
Yep.
2 wasn't, I don't think, quite as good as the first Creed, but I still enjoyed Creed 2 quite a bit. And then, of course, news came out that Michael B. Jordan himself was going to be directing Creed 3. We haven't had a lot of news on that since, but just something came out this morning, Rob, that sounds really interesting. Jonathan Majors, the lead from Lovecraft Country, and what people are speculating is going to be Kang the Conqueror and Ant-Man. Jonathan Majors apparently in final negotiations to be the opponent, to be the antagonist in Creed 3 alongside Michael B. Jordan. This is what it says over at Deadline. It says MGM and first-time director Michael B. Jordan have set their sights on Lovecraft Country star Jonathan Majors to be his adversary in the ring for Creed 3, sources said. Negotiations are underway for Majors to star in the film as Adonis Creed's ring nemesis. It's the latest big movie role looming for Majors, who's coming off the first season of the critically lauded HBO series Lovecraft Country, which I enjoyed a great deal. His rise to A-list from his 2019 breakout in The Last Black Man in San Francisco has been meteoric. Majors most recently co-starred in the Spike Lee-directed Da 5 Bloods for Netflix, and he is set to play Kang the Conqueror in Marvel's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. He will next be seen in Jaime's Samuel-directed Western The Harder They Fall for Netflix and Black Label Media's Devotion. So, Jonathan Majors. And Pass Out Mesquite sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. So, Jonathan Majors. Rob, I got to tell you, I was one of the last guys to the party for The Last Black Man in San Francisco. So
Dude.
I was way behind the curve on that. And then so when I didn't see it till after Lovecraft Country. So, but watching Lovecraft, that was really my first big exposure to him. And I just remember thinking, this type of subject material and this type of a thing, and he's really carrying the show. And I really enjoyed him. Then we got all excited when he was going to be in Ant-Man Quantumania. Really good to see him there. And now he's going to be apparently Creed 3. Now, we should point out, he's not officially signed yet, but when they say they're in final negotiations now, that means you've reached a place where, yes, they've decided you're the guy we want in the movie, and he has decided, yes, I want the role. And they've come to that agreement. So once that's done, they stop looking at everybody else, and they just try to hammer out the details of the contract. 95% of the time, Rob, once it gets to this stage, the deal gets signed, but sometimes it doesn't, so we'll keep that in mind. But let's just move forward here, assuming that Jonathan Majors is indeed going to be the antagonist in Creed 3. Fantastic. I think this is great because not only has he already proven to be a terrific director, he brings the physicality to it. The dude's built like a boxer. I mean, he looks great. I think him alongside Michael B. Jordan is going to be fantastic. Now let's just see if they get a good script. Anyway, Rob, you hear about Jonathan Majors joining Creed 3. What do you think?
Well, first of all, dude, he's a fantastic actor. I loved The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I thought it was terrific. He's great. I mean, I haven't seen all of Lovecraft Country, but he's great in Lovecraft Country. I've seen the first 4 episodes now. I know I got to catch up. There's so much. And in Da 5 Bloods. And what I'm hoping for is I love his look. And I know this is, I mean, it's silly to probably say this, but dude, I'm a huge Rocky 3 fan. I mean, who isn't, right? Rocky 3. And one of the things that made Rocky 3 is, of course, the character of Clubber Lang, played by Mr. T. And I loved the verbal sparring. I loved the trash talk that came out of Mr. T's mouth. Like, Mr. Lang, what do you predict for this fight? Pain. You know, I mean, I think that Jonathan Majors has to bring that kind of Muhammad Ali / Clubber Lang trash talk. I want to see that. I want to see somebody that's just leaps off the screen, because I want an antagonist that is both fun and physically imposing. And I'm so there for this because it is the 3rd movie in the franchise. And I really, like you, loved Creed. And Creed 2 was good. I mean, I liked how they fleshed out the character of Ivan Drago. It was kind of like the Cobra Kai of the Rocky franchise in a way. And I've got high hopes for this. I mean, Michael B. Jordan, probably with all the people that he's worked with, all the directors, working with Ryan Coogler twice, and I thought the boxing scenes in the first Creed, those long take things, I think. And Michael B. Jordan's been around for the better part of 2 decades now. I think he's really going to knock it out of the park as a director. I love him. I have a huge man crush on the guy. I'm excited for this movie, John, and this casting. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Whenever I hear somebody mention Mr. T in Rocky 3, all I hear is, "Hey, woman! Hey, woman!" It's like, he can say it like that.
It's so good. He was so good.
He was so good in that.
He was so good in Rocky 3. I mean, one of the great villain turns of the early 80s, certainly.
I don't hate the man, but I'll destroy anyone who tries to take what I got. He's so good in that. Anyway, guys, question is
almost 40 years later, we can quote him.
And we're still quoting him. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about this? With Lovecraft Country's Jonathan Majors apparently lining up to be the antagonist in the new Creed 3. We love the news over here. What do you guys think about it? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's do one more thing off the top, and that is this. Rob, file this one under When Hell Freezes Over.
Uh-oh.
But you guys have known that I am the eternal skeptic when it comes to Indiana Jones, in particular when it comes to Indiana Jones 5. Now, obviously, I love Indiana Jones, and I love the movies, right? I don't even think Crystal Skull is the flaming pile of garbage that a lot of people do. It's a bad film. I've always kind of contended, Rob, that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was like a good generic adventure movie. Like if the name of that movie was, Professor Chamberlain and the quest for the jungle treasure, and it was just something else.
Alan Quartermain.
Alan Quartermain. That's right. You could have put Quartermain in there. Bring back Sean Connery to play Alan Quartermain again. Or it was Richard Chamberlain that played him first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Richard Chamberlain, and then Sean Connery played the same character in what's the name of the movie that I worked on?
League of Extraordinary
Gentlemen. Yes. So, I mean, all this kind of stuff, but I have been very skeptical with all them talking. We're going to do Indiana Jones 5 and it gets delayed, then Spielberg leaves and all this kind of stuff. And I have remained very skeptical of, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe they're doing Indiana Jones 5. They can announce, that Harrison Ford's all ready to go. They can say all they want about Phoebe Bridger-Waller. They can say all they want that Mads Mikkelsen's on board now. They can say all that. That's great. But I'll believe it when I see it. Well, according to the news now, Rob, I may be seeing it in less than 7 days. Because according to Deadline, Indiana Jones 5 is actually going to start shooting next week. That's what they're saying. Now, this comes to us from the folks over at Deadline who write, Jock, start the engine. The much-anticipated Indiana Jones 5 is due to begin filming in the UK next week. We have confirmed with sources close to the production. Rumors have been swirling that filming is imminent on the currently untitled 5th installment of the beloved Lucasfilm, now Disney franchise. And we hear cameras will start to roll from next week at Pinewood Studios and at other locations in the UK. So this is, Rob, another time when we can use that phrase, the tangibilization. This is the first time for me. Look, even when they brought on the new director, great. Even when the star said, yeah, I'm so excited for it, Harrison Ford. Even when they brought on Mads Mikkelsen and everybody else, it still just did not feel real to me, Rob. It's like, I don't know. We'll see. Let's see it actually happen, and then I'll get excited. And there's still 7 days, Rob, for this to fall apart. There are still 7 full days for this entire thing to fall apart. Now, don't misinterpret my skepticism here as lack of interest. I want to see another Indiana Jones movie. Sure, I do. I'm not poo-pooing on Indiana Jones. I just, I'm incredibly skeptical. But it looks like they're going to start shooting this thing next week. Rob, as we start to see this thing coming together, they bring in, the Logan and the Ford v Ferrari director. They bring in Hannibal himself. They bring in some really talented people. We've seen it start to come together, and now they're saying it actually starting next week. Where's your thoughts and anticipation level right now for Indiana Jones, and how do you react hearing it's actually going to start shooting within the next week?
Well, I read the opening scene where Phoebe Waller-Bridge goes to this island where Indiana Jones is currently living and brings him his fedora and his bullwhip, and Indiana Jones takes his bullwhip and throws it over his shoulder and shakes his head.
You've been
So
waiting for
I
that
read
all
that opening
night.
scene. I was like, I don't know, John. No, I did not read the opening scene, and that has nothing to do with the movie. That was just a joke for you people out there. Maybe it was a bad joke, but you know what? I've always loved stories where there's the grizzled over the hill character who has to come back and like redeem themselves, unforgiven, and Harrison Ford is pushing 80. So I'm really hoping that, and I'm sure James Mangold's a powerhouse director. I loved Ford v Ferrari. He's done some really great stuff. Of course, Logan, which is one of the great examples of that kind of thing. Both Professor X and Logan were these over the hill grizzled guys. And I'm really, if there's one director in Hollywood other than Spielberg who I think can tackle this material, I think it's James Mangold. And I for whatever reason, John, the skeptical angel is sitting on my shoulder going, "Don't set yourself up for disappointment, Bobby. Don't." I am setting myself up. I think there's going to be something quite wonderful in this movie, at least, because my optimistic nature tells me I should think this way, but I do believe it, John. I think this movie might turn out to be something really special. I hope Harrison Ford doesn't die of a horrible ailment when he's shooting it. Who knows? Because he already had he had a door fall on him in Force Awakens. I mean, you just never know. He gives 100% to himself. I'm just worried for his safety, John.
Plenty of time. Plenty of time for him to have 3 or 4 plane crashes between now and, because hasn't he had like 2 of them? Hasn't he like had to crash land 2 times that he's been piloting planes? It is. Hey, listen, but listen, in all honesty though, the thing that has really kept me on board with this, because once I heard that Spielberg was stepping away, number one, I was not surprised. But when I heard that James Mangold was coming on, and Ford v Ferrari was one of my favorite movies. What was that? 2018, 2000? I can't remember what year it came out. But it was one of my favorite movies of that year. I thought Ford v Ferrari was honestly, I thought it was a masterpiece. I thought it was absolutely incredible. I loved watching that film. I believe Logan, not everybody agrees with me on this, and that's fine, but I believe Logan is a top 3 all-time greatest comic book movie. I actually thought it was the best movie of the year overall, the year that it came out. But Logan, to me, was fantastic. This is a guy who clearly has sensibilities for telling great character drama, and he can do comic book movies. This is a guy, if it can't be Spielberg, this is a guy to do it, and that's what's kind of kept me on board with this whole Indiana Jones concept moving forward. And hearing that they're going to start shooting next week, again, I'll believe it when I see it, Rob. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this? The time for talk is over. It's time for them to start rolling cameras on Indiana Jones 5. Do you think they're actually going to get there? Whatever you guys are thinking, jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's now move into our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? It's really simple. You guys come up with our main topics. Whenever you come across a big, important topic, story, or issue that you think we should cover as a main topic here on the John Campea Show, go anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. And by the way, Peter Cunnington sends in a super chat badge in live chat. Thank you, Peter. All right, with that down, Rob, what is our first main topic today?
Well, John, our first topic comes from Warren A. Shepard. Unless I've missed it, I haven't seen you fellas talking about the new Mark Wahlberg trailer, Infinite. I've always found Wahlberg a bit flat when it comes to acting, but it's got the always golden Chiwetel Ejiofor in it to raise his game. With a new take on the immortal warrior trope, it could be the birth of a fresh new franchise, or it could be dead on arrival. Curious about your thoughts? Well, loosely based from D. Eric, Mike Krantz's fantasy novel. Evan McCauley, Mark Wahlberg, a self-medicated man diagnosed as schizophrenic because he's plagued by memories of places he's never visited. But just as he's on the verge of a mental breakdown, Evan is visited by the Infinites, a secret society who inform him that not only are his memories real, but they're all from his past lives. The Infinites take Evan into their fold and help him unlock the answers to his memories. Together, they must stop one of their own, Bathurst, played by Ejiofor, from his mission to destroy humanity.
Dun, dun,
John,
dun.
let me tell you, I mean, this sounds like a cross between Shutter Island and Highlander. And Anton Fuqua directed it. And I watched the trailer. The trailer looked interesting. I mean, it kind of had, it felt like a bunch of different movies sort of mashed together, but it looks like it's beautifully done. And, this was going to be a big theatrical release, and they kind of pulled the wool out from both Mark Wahlberg and Anton Fuqua, and it's debuting directly on Paramount Plus.
Yes.
Which I was like, this movie looks like something I would really have wanted to have seen in a theater. And I'm a big fan of Anton Fuqua. I mean, I think, ever since Training Day, I'll watch anything that he's directed. And it kind of bums me out that we're not going to see this theatrically, but it looks cool to me. I mean, I'm in. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. Although I do think The Reincarnationist Papers is an awesome title. And Infinite sounds like you're going into space.
Maybe. I'll say this too. You say Shutter Island and Highlander. I'll see that and I'll raise you an Assassin's Creed. Like the whole motif of remembering past lives and all this kind of stuff. There's a couple things here. Number one, I get that they want to put Infinite on Paramount Plus. They're launching this new service. They want to make a bit of a splash. This is the type of movie you can make you can make that kind of a splash.
Yep.
But Rob, they're Netflixian in their piss poor marketing of this thing. This thing comes out shortly, like in about a week and a half. And this was the first I've even heard. I mean, we heard of the film 6 months ago when they were shooting it. Yeah, we were talking about whatever, but this is like basically kind of out of nowhere Infinite. Now, look, the trailer I actually think is pretty solid. It's an intriguing trailer. Obviously, you've got Chiwetel Ejiofor in there. If you've got Chiwetel Ejiofor in your movie, I'm there. Like, it doesn't matter. Ever since he played the operative in Serenity, I have been there for anything Chiwetel Ejiofor will do. I think he is one of the great. He would have an Oscar on his mantle right now, Rob, if it wasn't for The Reconnaissance and Dallas Buyers Club. If it wasn't for Matthew McConaughey doing Dallas Buyers Club that particular year, Chiwetel Ejiofor would have a Best Actor Oscar on his mantle. Of that, I'm convinced. So you put him in there. That sounds great. Again, it does rub me a little bit the wrong way when you mentioned Shutter Island and Highlander. I mentioned Assassin's Creed. It rubs me a little bit. I don't mind similarities, but when I'm watching a trailer and all I can think about is those other movies, that's a little bit of a problem. But Rob, you said it. Antoine Fuqua is directing. If Antoine Fuqua is directing, then you have my attention. I mean, it's a lot like talking about Mangold as well. And by the way, I just want to point out that Iconic Reaction sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thanks, Iconic. As if he's there directing, okay, you've got my attention. And you know what? Our viewer wrote in, Rob, saying they actually find Mark Wahlberg a little bit flat. I find when Mark Wahlberg is on his game, I actually find him to be quite good. I mean, I didn't always. But in the last 10 years or so, I've actually found, you know what? It was ever since The Departed. Ever since The Departed.
That performance, oh my God, in The Departed, one of the great character actor turns ever.
And he got nominated for an Academy Award for that. He got an Oscar nomination for it.
So good.
And I thought it was really good. And then, of course, Chiwetel Ejiofor. We'll see how it rounds out. So I think it looks intriguing. I think this trailer looks intriguing. I will definitely be tuning in to Paramount Plus to check this out when it comes out, because I do have Paramount Plus. Question is for you guys. What did you think about the trailer for Infinite? Did it hype you up? Did you think it looked boring? Does it look like something's like, oh my God, why aren't they putting this in theaters? Or is it making it like, yeah, I can totally see why they put that straight to TV. I don't know. Whatever you guys are thinking, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Abner Milan, who writes, Did you read the news about Thor, Love and Thunder wrapped up production? Also, the Marvels started shooting yesterday, and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Black Panther 2 will start shooting in a few weeks. Does Kevin Feige have time to sleep? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, let's not bury the lead on this. Thor, Love and Thunder. Rob, it actually doesn't feel like that long ago that we were talking all excitedly about the fact that Taika Waititi had agreed to come back and do another Thor movie. Like that was it. If he was, of course, coming off of Jojo Rabbit and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, he knocked it out of the park with Thor Ragnarok. Very excited to see what he could do coming back. But Rob, again, it's that phrase tangibilization. And by the way, Glenmore Legister sends in a super chat badge in the live chat. Thanks, Glenmore. Wait a minute, they're done shooting? Like this movie is now wrapped. That's it. Anyway, yeah, so Chris Hemsworth got on social media to announce to the world, we've wrapped up shooting. Now take a look at this picture, which is absolutely ridiculous. Look at the size of Hemsworth. I mean, that's just crazy how big he's gotten. Now, take a look at that picture. Listen to the words he says here. This comes to us from the rapper who writes, on Instagram Tuesday, Hemsworth revealed shooting is wrapped on the film and showed off a set of guns that very well could surpass the bodybuilder golden mean of 20 inches. That's a wrap on Thor, Love and Thunder, he wrote, standing alongside Thor director and writer and actor, because since he plays Korg, Taika Waititi, who, as you'll see, is fully ready for motion capture. It's also National Don't Flex Day, so I thought this super relaxed photo was appropriate. And of course, when he talks about that super relaxed photo, look again at this picture, Don't Flex Day. And then, of course, you see Taika Waititi there, all done up in the motion caps. He's got the facial expression dots on him. He's ready to go playing Korg again, which is great. By the way, I love that character, Korg.
I do too.
I mean, the line "piss off Ghost" is one of my favorite lines in any comic book movie ever. Piss off Ghost. I just about died every time I hear it. Doesn't fail. Every time I hear it, I laugh my guts off. Anyway, Rob, it sounds like Christian Bale, he's done shooting. The movie's done shooting. Now, of course, at some point, probably 2 or 3 months from now, we're going to hear about them going in for reshoots. That's what every Marvel movie does. They always schedule a couple of weeks of reshoots and budget for it well in advance. As they start to see the film coming together in post-production, they get some new ideas. They go and reshoot some things. But for all intents and purposes, the official shoot of Thor, Love and Thunder is now done. Rob, I got to tell you, the thing about Thor that I wasn't expecting from myself. Now, I love the Thor movies. Obviously, the first Thor movie with that Kenneth Branagh directed, I think is the second most underrated comic book film of all time. The most, obviously, being Man of Steel. But I think that Thor movie is the second most underrated comic book film of all time. I love that movie. Thor: The Dark World was a step down. Thor Ragnarok was incredible. So I've always known I was looking forward to a new Thor movie. But you know what I have found when I first read this news about it dropping, I realized something. I'm a little bit extra excited for it because we've had Falcon and Winter Soldier. We've had WandaVision. We had Spider-Man after Endgame, but Spider-Man is a relatively new addition to the MCU, even though he may not be there for much longer, but he's a relatively new addition. I've also found myself getting excited because I'm kind of looking forward to getting back to one of the OG Avengers. Like I find myself like kind of really longing. I mean, I think that might be one of the reasons I'm actually looking more forward to Black Widow than I really should. Because I've never really been interested in a Black Widow or Hawkeye standalone series, but I'm actually finding myself kind of interested more and more in Black Widow. And I think it might be because for the same reason I'm feeling extra hyped about this Thor, because I'm kind of, while I'm loving the expansion of the MCU, Rob, I'm loving the expansion of it. I find myself kind of yearning for the OG ones as well. Like I like obviously we can't see Chris Evans or Robert Downey Jr. right now, but I mean to have Thor come back, that just feels like going home to me. So I'm excited for this on several levels. Rob, you heard about this that they've wrapped now their principal photography. What are your thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder right now?
Well, like you, I mean, I really liked Ragnarok. I mean, it kind of harked back to both Kirby and Walt Simonson's run on the character, which I always liked. It was so much fun. I found from the opening with Surtur to all the rest of the movie. I mean, with Korg's introduction and with Gladiator Hulk. I mean, I really just enjoyed Ragnarok. It was so much fun, and of course, the ending had huge ramifications to the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yes,
So
it did.
it mattered, and it was wildly entertaining. I'm really looking forward to this. I just hope that it doesn't go too ridiculous. Like I do hope that there is, look, it can be funny and amusing like the first one. Taika Waititi's humor can be on full display, but I hope that it doesn't go too far, because I mean, Thor is great, but I feel like making Fat Thor happen in Endgame and then coming off of Ragnarok, I would like to see a little bit of seriousness retained, and I want to see I mean, there is a character, the God Butcher is in this movie, and I hope he's not like a goof. You know, it's Christian Bale shaving his head. I want this movie to be badass, dude. I want it to be, dare I say it, metal.
Well, I mean, listen, if Jojo Rabbit is any indication, what we know that Taika Waititi can do, because even look back to the episodes he directed of Mandalorian, he is great at balancing out the bonkers with the incredibly dramatic. Like, he can do both. And if he can bring that same sensibility that he did in Jojo Rabbit, because on one part of Jojo Rabbit, you're laughing your guts out. On the other half, you're like trying to pick your guts up off the floor because of something that happened. Again, with Jojo Rabbit, all I'll say for people who've seen the movie is the shoe scene. I mean, it's been years since I've seen Jojo Rabbit, Rob. Whenever I still think about the shoe scene, I get sad. Like I get hit with the emotion that I felt like. And Taika Waititi is one of those guys who can really seamlessly and effortlessly, seems like he can move between both of those worlds of the bonkers and the serious. And if he can do that with a Thor: Love and Thunder, like you said, and keep that balance without going too far one way, it could be really special. It could be really, really good. So we'll see where that goes. Question is for you guys. What do you think about that? Thor: Love and Thunder, the principal photography is now done and in the can. How are you feeling about this one? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3, shall we? Rob, what is our third main topic today?
Well, our third main topic comes from Richard Huntington. Hello, crew. John, I know you often say that studios need to stop releasing movie trailers too early, and I agree. But did you see that they're talking about putting out a first Jurassic World 3 trailer a year in advance as a way to get help people get excited about going back to movie theaters today? I actually think it's a pretty smart move, since Jurassic is one of the biggest franchises in movies. Do you think a far in advance trailer is okay under these circumstances? And now, John, we heard from Colin Trevorrow himself, quote, "It's going to be sooner than you think. I can't talk about it just yet. We've got something fun planned, and it has everything to do with getting people back into the movie theaters." Well, this sounds intriguing to me. I mean, I've liked the Jurassic World movies. I thought the first one, was entertaining enough. It didn't change the world. And the second one got a little strange plot-wise, but I still, I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed these movies. I don't know if I've enjoyed them. I mean, the Jurassic Park franchise, it's not like the first films of the franchise seem to be better than the rest, but they're still entertaining. I mean, entertaining than a lot more other movies, studio blockbusters. So I'm kind of excited about this, especially if now, at the end of the second film, dinosaurs are in the wild. Like, what does that do to the world? It truly is a Jurassic World now, with dinosaurs roaming free everywhere. And that tickles my inner 10-year-old. And I really hope that what we see is something I want Dinosaur Mayhem, John. I want people getting eaten all over the place. I want dinosaurs rampaging through our major cities. I want Washington, D.C. overrun with raptors. Bring it on. And I don't know what they have planned for this trailer. I guess the subject matter, do I think it's a mistake to promote a movie a year in advance? No, we've seen it happen before, and I think, why not? That's what Jurassic Park is, one of those movies where when I saw the original in 93, I felt the same way Sam Neill did. You know, you're taking off your glasses, even though I wasn't wearing glasses in the theater, and looking in wonder at those dinosaurs. And I kind of still feel that way whenever I see one of these movies.
I mean, for me, you know how I feel about this. Is promoting a movie a year in advance a mistake? It's absolutely a mistake because you're not actually getting anything out of it. Any pop that a trailer you drop a year in advance, any pop you get from it is going to be gone in about 3 weeks. Any pop and buzz and sizzle, and you've just blown your load. I think, you know, Godzilla King of the Monsters was a great example of that. They put out this big, huge trailer for it a year before the movie came out. People got excited. Then they put out some more stuff and some more stuff. And by the time we actually got around to when the movie came out, everybody was like, wait a minute, that movie still hasn't come out yet? It's like, it's almost like a lot of people were over it. I've been saying for a long time, I think studios, and we are seeing a trend in this now, Rob, thankfully, where they are shortening and shortening the amount of time between when they drop their first trailer. Because it got to a point, Rob, where it just kind of became normal that like 10 months before a movie came out is when a lot of movies are dropping their first trailers. And it's like studios are now realizing that there's no benefit to that. They're just, any excitement they get dissipates and is gone. They might as well do it closer to the vest. But I'll say this, Rob. In this kind of a situation, this is actually a pretty creative and neat idea on their part.
I think so.
I think the key is what you were just reading there from Trevorrow, who's of course the director of the film, saying, you know, yeah, we're gonna have something coming. It's coming sooner than you think, and part of it isn't to promote Jurassic World Dominion, although that's part of it, but is to get people excited about going back to the movie theaters again. I like the way he wrote it in the email. This is, whether we love the films or don't love the films, the Jurassic franchise is one of the biggest franchises in movies. And it elicits a lot of excitement. And Rob, that Jurassic World short film that Trevorrow put out, I guess it's about a year ago now. It feels like a year ago at any rate. Like, that was fun and people buzzed about it and got excited. So I'm actually okay with the idea of taking a Jurassic World trailer, putting it out a year in advance, if it's partially to get people excited just about going back to the movies again, and then partially just to, hey, for any of you who don't know, we got another Jurassic movie coming next year. If it's serving two purposes like that, I think it's kind of a neat idea. And yes, sign me up. I'm excited to see what they're going to do, because that little short film they did, what was it called? Battle at Hill Rock or Red Rock or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but whatever it is, I mean, I thought that was a lot of fun. And if he can bring stuff like that to it, it should be pretty good. So I actually like the move. I think this is a circumstance where you can do something like this. So I'm down for it. Question is for you guys. What do you think about this? The director, Colin Trevorrow, saying we've got our first little teaser coming of Jurassic World Dominion, even though the movie's still a year away, but the target of it is to get people excited about coming back to the movies. This is a good franchise to do that with, I think. What do you guys think about that? Jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, we've got one more thing to cover. It's kind of an off the top, but we decided to save it here for last, and that is this. Rob, obviously, speaking of some of the most important film franchises in the history of movies, you can't talk about that without, at some point in the conversation, the James Bond franchise coming up. It's obviously one of the most iconic, most important, and long-term one of the most successful film franchises in history. Of course, James Bond was just in the news again because Amazon has just finalized its deal to acquire MGM, and of course, Bond is a part of MGM. And so we're going to be seeing Bond movies in the future under an Amazon banner, which is really rather interesting. Now, overall, we spoke about this, Rob. Overall, I really feel that this is a move that will be very beneficial for Amazon, and I think this move is going to be very beneficial for MGM and all the properties under them. When you look at Amazon's short but impressive track record, particularly with some of their dynamite originals, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is one of the best things on TV. The Boys is utterly fantastic. Invincible was great. They have done a good job so far of creating a safe place for artists and creators to work, as well as balancing out with having monetary success. They've been doing a pretty good job. But Rob, one of the people who does not share that optimistic outlook is John Logan, who is the screenwriter for two prominent James Bond films, Skyfall, which some people's favorite James Bond movie, and what was the other one he did? I think it was
Spectre.
Spectre was the last one that he did. He's not too thrilled about it. As a matter of fact, he's come flat out to say, yeah, this sends a chill down my spine, he says. This comes to us from the folks over at IndieWire. Of course, you see the headline there. Skyfall Writer worries that Amazon will destroy 007 franchise after the MGM buy. He says, Bond is not content. Now, it says this. John Logan, a three-time Oscar-nominated screenwriter whose credits include the Daniel Craig starring James Bond tentpole Skyfall and Spectre, penned an essay for the New York Times expressing concern for the future of the 007 franchise in the wake of Amazon's purchasing of MGM. As Logan writes, with the acquisition of MGM and its movie catalog, the online retail giant bought into the James Bond franchise. When I heard this news, a chill went through me. Bond isn't just another franchise, not a Marvel or a DC. It is a family business that has been carefully nurtured and shepherded through the changing times by the Broccoli and Wilson family. He goes on to write, what happens? What happens if a bruising corporation like Amazon begins to demand a voice in the process? Logan asks. What happens to the comradeship and quality control if there's an Amazonian overlord with analytics passing every decision? What happens when focus groups report that they don't like Bond drinking martinis or killing quite so many people? And that English accent's a bit alienating. So could we have more Americans in the story for marketability? He goes on, then of course his big thing is Bond is not content, he says. He's not a mere commodity, Logan concludes. He has been a part of our lives for decades now, from Sean Connery to George Lazenby to Roger Moore to Timothy Dalton to Pierce Brosnan to Daniel Craig. We all grew up with our version of 007, so we care deeply about him. Please let 007 drink his martinis in peace. Don't shake him. Don't stir him. That comes to us from one of the James Bond screenwriters. By the way, writes in a super chat badge. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Rob, there's several things to unpack here, but I'm going to say something unpopular.
Uh-oh.
This guy's office rocker. Dude, I appreciate you're a great screenwriter. Clearly, 3 times Academy Award nominated screenwriter. But this is, what do you say? Every single thing he said, Rob, was a hypothetical worst case scenario of a slippery slope. Nothing he doesn't say one thing that's tangible. That's my problem with that. Look, I don't have any problem with him expressing his opinion. That's fine. But if he's going to sit down and write an op-ed piece for the New York Times, I think it was the New York Times that he did for. Yeah. If he's going to sit there. Now look, often when celebrities or whatever get asked a question and they answer it, I don't think we should take too seriously. Somebody's put on the spot. This guy actually sat down and wrote an op-ed piece for the New York Times. And my big problem with it is this. Every one of his concerns, Rob, he bases on a hypothetical situation that may never happen. Like, not once in this article does he say, for example, look at how Amazon did this. Therefore, I'm concerned. It was all, what happens if Amazon conducts a marketing study and that marketing group says, we don't want James Bond drinking martinis. They're going to take martinis away from James Bond. Nobody said that. That's a totally made up hypothetical situation that a dude just pulled out of his ass. And I got news for him. James Bond is content. You can say all you want. James Bond isn't content. Yes, he is. He's absolutely content. And guess what? That content paid you a great writer salary. You know why? Because it's content. It's great content. It's legendary content. It's iconic content, but content it is. Just like Star Wars is beloved for generations. Well, all that is true. But guess what? Star Wars is still content. And it is a franchise. You can say this isn't a franchise. This isn't Marvel. This isn't DC. You're damn right it is. It absolutely is. Now, I get it. Bond has a special place in his heart. I get that. And that's great. And I appreciate that very, very much. all of us, Rob, have movies and characters and stories and TV shows that are near and dear to us. Some for generations, like a Star Wars, maybe some more recent, like a Pokemon. I don't know. I'm just pulling names out of my ass. So I get what he's saying. And listen, bad things might come. It's totally possible that bad things could potentially come out of this Amazon acquiring MGM when it comes to James Bond. But if you're going to sit down and write an entire op-ed piece for the New York Times, at least point me to something concrete that shows me a basis for your concern. Now you can say, you got that Susie girl to babysit Junior. What happens if Susie is an alien creature that feeds on human flesh? Well, that would be bad news, Rob. Well, wait a minute. No, point me to something tangible that Susie's actually done to cause me concern. I don't know. So I get what he's saying. I do. I understand concern. I do. I think if, take one of my favorite franchises, I don't know, if Star Wars was suddenly taken over by Pauly Shore, would I be concerned? Sure. But I don't know. I think it's a bit of a stretch at this point. Anyway, Rob, you, out of the two of us, are the much bigger James Bond aficionado. You read his words. You saw what he was saying. How do you respond to it?
Well, John, as a lifelong James Bond fan, and I say this with all the love in my heart, if the James Bond franchise had put out 24 perfect films that were beyond reproach, I would say maybe he has a point. But the James Bond franchise is spotty at best. As much as I love them and I love all the James Bond movies, it's not exactly a pantheon of movies that people can point to and go, all of those movies were great, because they weren't. Some were much better than others. And in terms of movies that we can say are really classic, like obviously people love Casino Royale and Skyfall, but before that, how many years do you have to go back before you have films that are beloved? I mean, I really liked GoldenEye and Living Daylights, but that was 95 and 87 respectively. So the James Bond franchise, while I love it, has been spotty in terms of quality. And the last Bond film, Spectre, is my cure for insomnia, John. And that's one that John Logan wrote. And it gives me no pleasure not to love a James Bond movie, but I don't love them all. And I think that if Amazon, it's in their best interests to make sure that the Bond franchise stays healthy. And like I've talked about things like, wouldn't it be interesting to go back and readapt all of Fleming's original novels as season-long stories, like 10-episode miniseries that are set in the time that they were written, like the 50s and 60s, make them period pieces? That would be an interesting way to go, and it could be very, very cool. There's a lot of things you could do. I wanted them to do a miniseries about the rise of Spectre, the Bond's nemesis organization, that bent on world domination and all that. There's a lot of things that you could do with the Bond franchise that would be cool in the hands of Amazon. And I'm not worried that they're going to take martinis away from James Bond. I'm not worried that they're going to gender swap him or suddenly have him come out as, I don't know, trans or something. I'm not worried about that. Although that could be interesting if the story's good enough. But I'm not worried about any of that. I think that good stories, well told, are in Amazon's best interests. I don't think they're going to come in and smash the franchise with a battering ram and destroy everything that James Bond is. They don't want to do that. It's one of the crown jewels of their acquisition with MGM. So they're going to want to make sure that the Bond franchise stays as healthy as ever. And hopefully the film series with Die Another Day, I always say that, No Time to Die, is going to be one of the best Bonds we've ever seen. That's what I hope for. So John Logan, remember, I love you. You wrote Gladiator, but you also wrote Star Trek Nemesis. Just reminding you.
Well, and I want to say this too. I appreciate when one of the creatives, in this case, one of the Bond screenwriters, I appreciate that he clearly doesn't look at James Bond as just another paycheck that he got.
Right.
He is clearly emotionally connected. He's emotionally invested in the character, invested in the property. And you know what? While I may disagree with a lot of things that he wrote, in that op-ed piece, I gotta say, at least as a fan, I can sit back and say, you know what, I at least appreciate that the dude is emotionally invested in this stuff that he's creating, and I think that's a good thing. So kudos to him for that, even if I disagree with all of his hypothetical, panic inducing kind of things. What happens if Amazon says, you know what, James Bond should wear a bra on the outside of his clothes for no reason? Okay, anyway, there's just that. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about the article? I appreciate it when a creator gets emotionally invested in the stuff, although there's no point in trying to press panic buttons for created situations that you just made up in hypothetical situations. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. What do you guys think about that? Jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With all that down, let's now move over and start taking your live questions, shall we? And once again, if you want to send in a live question to get on the show, or maybe if we don't have time to get to it on the show, it'll appear on the next companion video or something, simply use the tip link that's down in the description of this video. You can click on it there, or you could enter it in manually at www.streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. Once again, you'll be getting your comment or question read on the show or in an upcoming companion video if it's appropriate for the show. And of course, you'll be supporting the channel at the same time. All right, guys, with that down, let's get on over to your live questions, shall we? We're going to start things off here with Russell Amador, who writes, "Hey, John, one of the best parts of movies no longer being delayed as we take a step back to pandemic movie releases, pre-pandemic movie releases, is that Candyman is coming out this August. As a fan of the original, I'm interested in seeing the new take. I hope it's good." Well, remember, Rob, we had footage come out for Candyman. I am interested in the movie. I am not a giant fan of the original, to be honest with you. I don't hate the original, don't get me wrong. And I saw that before the pandemic that they dropped a teaser and stuff like that. Looked interesting. I'd be lying if I said I'm super hyped about it, but it is going to be good to finally see it. Rob, where are your expectations right now for Candyman?
Well, it sounds really dude, I love the first Candyman. Actually, I really like the second Candyman too, but I love the first Candyman. Yeah, I think it's a terrific film. I recently revisited the film, and it still has a certain power that is unique to itself. Now, I've heard this is in that same continuity. It's an updating. I mean, the original film I think was 90s, so it's 31 years later, and I really can't wait for this, to be honest. I'm hoping that they knock it out of the park. I'm really excited.
All right. Next up, we've got Bojax, who writes in, "Hey, John, off the top of my head, Star Wars is the only ongoing franchise without doing a reboot yet. Do you think the MCU is an ongoing franchise with heroes coming and going, or will it be rebooted at some point?" Listen, everybody's going to have a different opinion on this. I 100% believe the MCU is going to be rebooted at some point. I mean, hell, Rob, the comics themselves have been rebooted at points. I mean, they restart and reboot and reimagine and retell origin stories all the time. At some point, that will happen to the MCU. The question is not if, it's when. In the next 5 years, highly doubtful. But once you start, Rob, here's the thing. In Hollywood terms, 5 years is almost an eternity in Hollywood. So do I see it happening within the next 5 years? No. But once you start getting to 8, 9, 10 years from now, yeah, then I could totally see them saying, okay, this universe we've had has run its course. There's nothing more we can do without it just becoming completely outrageously bombastic. So at some point, they're going to hit the reset button. Of that, I have no doubt. Rob, to me, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Rob, how would you answer that? Are we going to see the MCU at some point get rebooted, or will this just be an ongoing thing for as long as the foreseeable future?
Well, the beauty of it is that in the comic books, there's sort of a precedent, for rebooting the universe. So it's not, I think, knowing how they can do that, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think that the MCU, I think it could run for another at least decade. I mean, it's already 13 years old and we're still excited about it. And if they're going to build up to another Thanos-sized villain turn or something, before we see a major reboot, we got another 10 years, man. I could see this movie franchise going to 50 or maybe 60 movies before it gets rebooted, which would make it, I mean, it's already unprecedented in Hollywood history, but man, I could see it happening.
All right.
So probably I'll be dead before they reboot the universe, I think.
See, I don't think so. I think we're going to be around to see this thing get rebooted, but we'll see. All right, next up, we've got Bojack's writes. As many have said, theaters are back, but to me, back to the same old BS. Why didn't they take time to make the experience better? Well, they've been shut down, almost bankrupt. That's why you haven't seen the movie theaters do much. They've gone lights out, almost bankrupted. That's probably why you didn't see them do much else. Anyway, take time to make the experience better. I'm still seeing 20 minutes of previews, kids crying during A Quiet Place 2, and so on. Seems like a missed opportunity. Well, again, they were borderline bankrupt and the lights were out in all their places. So, I mean, there's only so much you can do. Look, Rob, I got to tell you, I don't know if I'm just the luckiest son of a bitch in the world, but it was different 20 years ago. But in the last 15 years, out of the, I know I'm going to pull a number out of my ass, the 1,500 times that I've been to a movie theater to watch a movie, I think, if I'm being generous, I've had maybe 15 to 20 experiences out of 1,500 of, man, there was a baby that wouldn't stop crying during that movie. Or, man, there was a guy who was just talking on his phone out loud during the movie. I hardly ever see anything like that. And I go to some really great movie theaters. I go to some pretty sketch movie theaters. But I mean, I don't know. I just, whenever I see people writing into me and say, John, these girls behind me were, eating, I don't know, insert the name of the loudest candy you can say. And they kept kicking the back of my chair and pouring Pepsi on my head. I just, it is a different, I just look, whether I'm in Canada or the US, big theater, small, I just haven't been having that experience. At least to me, it's extremely rare. It happens. It's going to happen. But to me, it's extremely rare. As far as the trailers thing, yeah, they should definitely shorten the amount of trailers. Go do what ArcLight was doing with 3 trailers maximum. Start the movie. I believe in that. But I just have not had the sheer number of negative theater experiences that some people sometimes make it up. But again, maybe I'm just super lucky. I don't know. Rob, what about you? You go to a ton of theatrical screenings. Not so many in the last year, obviously, but what would you say is your personal ratio roughly to, perfectly normal theater going experiences to something that borderline almost ruined your experiences? How would it be for you?
No, there's been very few experiences that have ruined sometimes there's rude people, and I've noticed, luckily that's why I love the ArcLight here, because it was a premium theater and people knew if you went to the ArcLight, nobody put up with people with phones and things. But I, for the most part, haven't had bad experiences unless I was actually seeking them out on purpose. Like I went to see Friday the 13th Part 3D the night it opened with a particularly well-known raucous crowd theater. And I went there specifically to experience that. It was one of the greatest movie-going experiences of my life. And then when I was in New York for the first time in 1990, I went and saw him. Like I said to my sister, our grandmother sent us there together. My sister and I are like, I said to her, we have to go see a movie in Times Square. And she said, why? I go, I want to see a raucous, rowdy audience. And we went and saw, this is terrible to say, but we went and saw Exorcist 3, which was a movie I'd already seen. And I love Exorcist 3. I'm like, I want to see this movie with the Times Square crowd. And I wasn't wrong, John. People were screaming and talking back to the movie, but they were in it. They were in the movie. And it has still the greatest jump scare of any movie ever made. And when that happened, popcorn flew, dude. Popcorn flew. And it was exactly what I wanted. And it was again, probably the second greatest movie-going experience of my life. The third, by the way, if you ask, was seeing Battle Royale in Spain at 10 o'clock in the morning. That audience was on their feet at certain points. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
All right. Next up, we've got Shay Ms. Mizrahi, who writes, Recommend a comedy show on Netflix called The Kominsky Method. That's Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin in that. The Kominsky Method. It stars Michael Douglas as an acting teacher and Alan Arkin as his agent and best friend. It's funny, charming, and Alan Arkin steals the show. The show just returned for season 3 and her last. I saw one episode of The Kominsky Method, and I really liked it, and I thought, I'm going to put this on the shelf till I can really just sit down and just binge this. And I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but again, it's won awards. A lot of people, I love Michael Douglas. I love Michael Douglas. So I don't know, Rob, have you had a chance to watch any of this Kominsky Method?
I watched the first season and I really liked it. Kominsky Method. I loved it. And I haven't watched the second season. And in the new season, I mean, Kathleen Turner, it's a reteaming of the Romancing the Stone team. And I'm like, all right.
Wait a minute. Kathleen Turner is in it?
Yeah. Yeah, she's in the third because Alan Arkin is not. And so Kathleen Turner, they're bringing her back, so she's in this season, and I'm like, I'm up for that. I'm
just trying to look up something here to see if I can find it. Okay, one of my most positive, fun, best days ever, doing what I do, like my job, was this day that they invited me down to, I got to go down to this facility in Hollywood, and I just got to sit down with just me, Michael Douglas, and Paul Rudd for like an hour. I just got to sit down with the two of them. And obviously they were promoting Ant-Man at the time. And Michael Douglas, first of all, you think a guy like Michael Douglas, who has been not only how long his career's been, Rob, but as a child, his dad, I mean, he's like dad, Kurt Russell, Kurt Douglas. I mean, Hollywood, absolute royalty. Like he's a god. And then the career Michael Douglas had, he's been around it all. He's seen it all. He's done it all. Let me tell you how nice this guy is. We did like an hour. Paul was hilarious. But me, Paul, and Michael, and you could tell Michael doing this big comic book movie was a kick for him, but also very new to him. But he comes over after we were taking a break. Like we were about 45 minutes in, we were taking a break so we could all, use the bathroom, grab a drink off of the cart and whatever. And Michael Douglas walks over to me, pulls me aside. And now listen, I know full well before you say anything, Rob, I know he was just lying and blowing smoke up my ass. Okay. I know that, but Michael Douglas comes over, he takes me by the arm, pulls me over, and he says, you're really good at this. And I instantly know this is the professional Michael Douglas just being really kind to a reporter. I know that. Okay. I know that. But the fact that he would even bother to waste the time, energy, effort, and whatever to walk over and say, I'm going to make this moron feel good for a minute. And he walks over and says, you're really good at this and blah, blah. If you could see my soul, I lit up like a Christmas tree because he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. He just wanted to make somebody feel good for a minute. And holy shit, did he make me feel good. And that's the type of dude he is. So yes, Las Vegas, I love him in Las Vegas. By the way, Michael Douglas was there sitting beside Robert De Niro in my infamous leaving Robert De Niro hanging incident. So he was involved with that too. But yeah, anything with him, whether it's Kominsky Method or whatever, I'm totally on board with because I just think this dude is just dynamite. I just think the guy's dynamite. Anyway, always, I'll always be on Team Michael Douglas for sure. All right, next up, K Major writes, you mentioned your favorite TV presidents. Yeah, I think obviously the two are Martin Sheen's president from West Wing and Dennis Haysbert from 24. Anyway, you mentioned your favorite TV president. I want to do movie presidents. My top two. First is Harrison Ford in Air Force One. Dude, your president just beat up a bunch of terrorists. Give him a life term. Second is Bill Pullman, Independence Day. That speech is GOAT. Those are great. But Rob, I'm going to say this. One of my favorite movie presidents is, let's go right back to what we were just talking about.
Michael Douglas.
And the American president, an American president. He was great in that. I love that. Rob, when you think about some of your favorite presidents in movies. Who comes to mind for you?
Dude, Andrew Shepard in The American President, man. Michael
Yep.
Douglas, it's right up there. When he gives
My
that
name's
speech
Andrew
at the end,
Shepard, and I am the president of the United
he's
States.
talking about Bob Rumson. Are you there? You up for that, Bob? You know, you come after me. It's so good. I love An American President. I know it's like a prototype for The West Wing. It's the best thing ever. I see it as like the best unmade Star Trek movie, along with Master and Commander. I know that's weird to say, but I would say that those two, Bill Pullman is definitely up there, and those are both. And of course, you gotta love Harrison Ford as the president. I really, if he had continued on with the Jack Ryan series, Jack Ryan becomes president of the United States, and I was desperately hoping that would happen. But there are other presidents. Like, I have to say, this is another thing to say. One of my favorites is actually in a fantasy sequence. It's Martin Sheen as Greg Stillison in The Dead Zone. And when
I remember that.
When Christopher Walken has the dream that he's the crazy maniacal president, he's like, "Put your hand on that panel, I'll cut it off and put it there for you." And then when he launches the nuclear weapons, he says, "The missiles are flying. Hallelujah." And then, of course, with Henry Fonda as the president in Failsafe. I love that, which is a great movie. And also the president, Peter Sellers, as the president of the United States, and Dr. Strangelove is another favorite of mine.
Gary Worthington in the live chat throws in one that I really should have thought of too. This isn't a classic one, but it's one that's really charming. He mentioned Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline's movie, Dave. If you guys haven't seen Dave, because it's got him, it's got Alien Sigourney Weaver as the first lady, and it's got, I believe it's Skeletor. I think it's it's the guy who played Skeletor in the old
Frank
He-Man.
Langella.
Frank Langella as, like, one of the bad guys, whatever. Where basically Kevin Kline plays a guy who looks exactly like the president. And when the president has like a heart attack that puts him in a coma due to having sex with some intern or something, so the government wants to keep it hush hush what happened to the president, so they go and get Kevin Kline to step in and pretend he's the president, so the world thinks it. But he's a really good guy. And if you guys have not seen Dave, I highly encourage you to check out Dave, because it's a good, funny little film. And also the Michael Douglas connection, because Kevin Kline and Michael Douglas were in Las Vegas together. There you go. All right. Next up, Matt D writes, "Hey, John and Rob. When I read the book Without Remorse, I thought it would make an excellent movie. It would have if the Amazon movie had remotely followed the book. There was an end credit scene suggesting a sequel. Think there will be one." Well, Rob, I think it's fair to say you and I were both very excited about the Without Remorse movie, and I think you and I were both quite disappointed with it. I don't know that the problem was they didn't follow the book well enough. I forget the source material. It just wasn't a well-executed movie. And then that little end credit scene felt so forced. Rainbow. I mean, it just felt so forced. You know what? It felt every bit as forced as that Green Lantern end credit scene with Mark Strong as Sinestro, where Sinestro, I'm a good guy. There's a yellow ring. I want to be a villain. And then end like that. That's how forced it felt. I don't know. How would you respond to what Matt's writing here, Rob?
I was with you. I mean, it was kind of, a generic action movie. And look, Michael B. Jordan was very good, I thought, but maybe even a little bit one note in the role, but I think that's because of the way it was written. I liked a lot of what was in there, but it did deviate from the book, and the book, I think, was more interesting than what we got. And I think it was an example of maybe studio notes, and it didn't entirely work for me, and I was kind of bummed out by it. But again, this idea that, we're going to set up a universe, like, look, we know there is the Tom Clancy verse. If you want to look at the Jack Ryan novels and then the novels with John Clark, yes, they all work together. They're all part of the same universe. And I'm like, okay, great. But why don't you concentrate on making your John Clark movie great first? And then we all know that Rainbow Six could be coming, but why do you have to, do this? I'm like, your movie wasn't that good. So now you're telling us you're going to have another movie? I mean, why don't you concentrate on making your first movie great first? And then we'll listen when you make Rainbow Six.
Yeah, which they failed to do. They failed to do. All right, next up. Alan writes, "Hey, John, following up on the question earlier about overpowered characters, which we talked about yesterday, do you think we could ever see characters like Rune King Thor, no, Beyonder, the One Above All, Living Tribunal, Molecule Man appearing in movies in true comic book form? No, I don't think so." Rob, like we were talking the other day about one of the challenges they always got to be careful of is not to overpower their characters too awful much. Because, look, one of the big struggles about making any good Superman movie is he's a god. I mean, he's Superman. Right. And that creates some real problems in telling compelling narrative story. So that's why when something like Superman and Lois comes along and they go, we're going to take it to the angle of this guy who is a god among men, he's struggling with how to deal with his teenage kids. He's struggling with how do I be this hero to the world and be a proper husband and be a proper father. And showing the Superman actually struggling with something is part of the reason why I've really bought into this Superman and Lois show. They've got to be careful. Look, I think if we ever do see like things like Rune King Thor and stuff like that, it will be much, much tempered. I think it would be way, way depowered than what it could be in comics. It just becomes ridiculous at some point. So I don't think, could we see incarnations of these characters and versions of these characters? We could, but I just don't see them doing anything as preposterous as they do. Look, the comics, I remember, Rob, and I was lamenting this before, right? They had, with mutants, they had, what do they call the super powered mutants? Omega level? Is that what they call them? I'm trying to,
yeah.
Omega level mutants? Right. So I remember there was 2 or 3, what they would call Omega level mutants. And then there was 5 to 10, and then there was 20, and then there's it's like everybody is super duper, way super duper cosmically indestructible powerful. I remember when they were doing, what's Richard's kid's name? What is Reed Richards' son's name again? Franklin. So when Franklin Richards came on the scene, the baby of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, who is a mutant himself, Franklin is a mutant. I remember it was I still remember that one issue, Rob, where they had Franklin in his nursery and they just showed him, he just created a universe. Franklin Richards just created. Remember that shot where it's the kid like this, and he's got this little glowing light, and you can see there's a universe in it. It's he's the ultimate. Well, then I remember watching some countdown show a while ago about the most powerful, and Franklin Richards isn't even in the top 10 anymore. They just can get carried away, and the movies have got to be very, very careful about that. So I don't know. I'd say no. Rob, how would you answer what Alan's right? Could we see Rune King, Thor, Beyonder, One Above All, Living Tribunal? Could we see guys like that in their full comic book kind of power?
I think we can, depending on how. Look, I would love to see Living Tribunal in the universe. I think the Eternals is going to tell us, because obviously the Celestials and they're talking about how the Eternals came from Titan, the same planet that Thanos comes from, hails from the same place. Somebody said to me that one of the Celestials is going to come back to judge the Earth in the Eternals movie, and I mean I don't know if that's true, but I'm like, well, that's really interesting, and I think that as we move into the cosmic realm and you've got characters like Galactus and many of the other Celestials that we're going to see, there's a possibility that we could see characters that way, but they're also going to have to temper that, because Franklin Richards creating his own universe, you get to the point where, well, if Wanda Maximoff also is going to change reality and turn the world into mutants, it gets too, you still need to keep it believable. As I always like to say, you still have to have verisimilitude. And those powered characters or overpowered characters, it becomes unbelievable at some point where you're like, come on, man. I mean, we still have to believe what it is that we're watching. And if they get too overpowered, the stakes then are, how do you defeat somebody that's that powerful?
Right, in an interesting way, without creating another overpowered character to go and fight them. So yeah, there's that. All right, law of diminishing returns. Next up, Neo Braveheart writes, Android has an AirDrop, AirDrop as a feature. It's called Nearby Share. I'm very familiar with Nearby Share. Under Settings on your phone, click Google Settings, then click Devices and Sharing, then enable Nearby Share for all contacts in your phone. Feature came out in 2020. So yes, I was talking the other day about how I might actually be moving over to, I used to be an iPhone user. I much prefer, then I switched to an Android. I much prefer Android, even though, you know, my favorite computing device is my iPad tablet. I have a MacBook Air. I like Apple products very much, and I used to use the iPhone. I just prefer Android. I just think Android is the superior phone, but that's just me. It's all up to preference. But I have been considering switching to an iPhone simply because of the AirDrop feature. Nearby Share is a functional thing, but it is not as nearly intuitive as AirDrop, and it's not as effective as AirDrop either. Like it's just not as intuitive or as fast or as quick or as easy to use as AirDrop is. And so, and by the way, there's another service, Rob. I think it's, you and I might have used it together. It's a service called Send It Anywhere. There's an app you can get that is cross-platform on Apple and Android called Send It Anywhere, where you can send files to anybody. Just, you know, I create a file on my phone and I'm just like, okay, I want to send it to Rob. Rob gets this link and he can click and he can download. But it's also clunky and it's slow and there's a few extra steps involved. The AirDrop feature to me is just, and I've seen now it in action and I've got a chance to use it. It's just, it is a better experience. And so I am possibly thinking about maybe switching to an iPhone for now until like the next Note Ultra comes out. But, you know, for now, we'll see how it goes. All right. Thanks for that, Neo Braveheart. Next up. Toronto Maple Losers writes, one of two. Sorry, John, sorry to see the Leafs break your heart for the 1,000th time. I myself am a Detroit sports fan, and even though the Red Wings have about 11 cups, last one being in 2010, they have been near the bottom of the league for 4 years now. The Lions suck too. And I do not see a 2 of 2. If we stumble across a 2 of 2, we'll get it. Yeah, listen, I know I am still in my lamenting phase. I'm still, again, the Toronto Maple Leafs have broken my heart again. It's the story of my entire life, ladies and gentlemen, my entire life. All right, next up, Michael Bolchar writes, hey, John, if Spider-Man No Way Home does have Tobey and Andrew in it, do you think this could be the first film to bring back the billion-dollar blockbuster? No. Because here's the thing, Rob. Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire showing up is only going to be something that's interesting to people who are Spider-Man fans. Like, non-Spider-Man fans aren't going to care if Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield show up. People who are Spider-Man fans are probably going to see Spider-Man No Way Home anyway. Mm-hmm. So, do I think it will give it a bump? Yes. Do I think it would create a really good push of buzz? Yes. Do I think it will make this Spider-Man movie a billion-dollar film? Well, it depends. I mean, listen, as a Spider-Man film, it already has the potential of being a billion-dollar film. And I think, listen, I think Spider-Man No Way Home, Rob, has the potential to be a billion-dollar film without Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire. So right. I really don't see it as a big thing. I think Tobey or Andrew being in it could represent a 6% increase in box office. Maybe 4, 5, or 6% increase in box office. So do I think it's enough to push it from like a $700 million movie to a $1 billion movie? No. Could it push it from a $950 million movie to a $1 billion movie? Sure. But I really don't even think they need those two to accomplish it. I don't know, Rob, what do you think about that?
I mean, I don't either. I think that the Spider-Man franchise as it exists now has been steadily, it's hugely popular. And I think it absolutely could be a $1 billion franchise. It doesn't need anybody other than Spider-Man to be in it and a good villain. And I think, look, if they have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and all these other characters, Alfred Molina, Jamie Foxx in this movie, it could make $1.5 billion, $2 billion if it's great, because what a crazy movie that would be. But I think it's probably going to make $1 billion no matter what it is, unless it totally sucks, which I can't believe this is the case.
Well, the only reason I wouldn't say it's a foregone conclusion that it'll make $1 billion anyway is that, I mean, we are still in the tail end of the pandemic. I'm not exactly sure. Are we going to be 100% recovered? But even with that being the case, I still think because previous one made $1 billion, this one could make $1 billion without Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. So we'll just see how that whole thing kind of begins to shape itself out. And we'll see if Maguire and Garfield are going to be in it at all, which I still think they will, even though there's no proof to back that up. All right, next up. Neo Braveheart writes, Android has AirDrop. Didn't we just talk about this? It's called Nearby Share. Under settings on your phone, click, yep, we already covered that. It was so important. Neo wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. He put it in twice. I appreciate that, man. All right, next up. Willow writes, come on, John. The Leafs at least have 13 Stanley Cups before they started sucking. The Canucks still have no Stanley Cups, and I don't know when we will ever get to one. Okay, yes, Willow, I appreciate that the Leafs have 13 Stanley Cups. None of them have come in my lifetime. None of them have come since 1967. None of that matters to me. None of that means anything. Oh, this team, 8 years before I was alive, they did this and this. I mean, great, but that means nothing to me. I will tell you this, though, Willow. Your Vancouver Canucks have been to the Stanley Cup Finals in our lifetime. The Toronto Maple Leafs have not. They haven't even been to the finals, Rob. In my entire lifetime, they've never even been to the Stanley Cup Finals. They haven't won a single playoff series in 17 years. 17 years since they've even won a single round of the playoffs. It's bad. It's bad. Anyway, I just want to bring this up because I saw something on this. I saw this online just before we started the show. And I just want to double check on this because somebody just mentioned it. Rob, you know how yesterday we were talking about, hey, man, AMC stock is doing good. It's at $31. You know what's at right now?
No.
$65.80 right now.
AMC, did Ann hold on to hers?
Nope, she sold it. She bought it for like $1 and sold it at like $17 or $18 a few months ago.
Oh, well, that's okay.
And we made a killing at the time, but it would have been more had it been, AMC Theaters has doubled its stock price in one day. So it's gone from like $2 a share when Ann bought a bunch and is now sitting at $60-something. I don't know if it can stay at $60-something, but oh my goodness, if yesterday, I saw some people in the live chat yesterday saying they were going to buy some AMC stock. I saw an argument break out in the live chat yesterday. I saw somebody say they were going to go buy some AMC stock at $30 and a couple people saying, that's stupid. It's not going to go up from here. Blah, this is how it's going to go. And then guess what? If that sucker went ahead and bought some AMC stock yesterday, he's already doubled his money in one day. Not bad. Good to see the theaters rebounding a bit here. Good to see the theaters rebounding. All right, let's get back over to the questions here, shall we? All right, thanks for that, Willow, by the way. Appreciate that. All right, next up, Wes Maurer. Tips in like $20. Thank you, Wes, for supporting our channel on that level, man. Hey, John and Rob. Sorry about the Leafs, John. I'm writing from Winnipeg, so maybe you can cheer on the Jets with me now. Just wanted to say, agree with Rob on the Spider-Man leaving to do Sony's universe for a while. And then make a return to the MCU. I mean, like, Rob, that is always a possibility as well. But look, if Sony and Marvel do end their deal, which I suspect is what's going to happen, don't know that, just guessing. But even if they do, there's nothing stopping them 4 years later saying, hey, let's make a new deal 4 years later. So it's not like if this deal ends, that's it forever and always. So they could end it and come back later on. Like Sony and Marvel may decide, hey, we've got an idea how to do something together again 6 or 7 years down the line. That could happen. Where's your thinking on that whole situation right now, Rob? Are you still leaning towards that they up the deal? Are you thinking a little bit more they may end the deal? I don't know. Where are you right now on that?
No, I think, I thought about it after we had the show yesterday. I absolutely think that they'll continue this deal on because I think it's good for everyone because look, it's not just Spider-Man, it's all of their other movies. If Morbius and Carnage and Venom are tied to the MCU, then all of it works synergistically together. And it could up the profile of all these movies. I mean, can you imagine, if you did like, I don't know, not the Clone Saga, but like Maximum Carnage or something, and Venom and Carnage were running rampant through the MCU. That could be kind of cool, And I mean, the possibility is there.
Yep.
And I think it could be fun, and I think it would just up the brand.
All right.
I think.
Next up, Dan S. writes, regarding one-season shows, which we talked about yesterday, someone mentioned The River. Great show. 2012 series with Bruce Greenwood. I love Bruce Greenwood. He's like one of the best character actors in like the business. Anyway, Joe Anderson and Leslie Hope. Only 8 episodes about a search party in the Amazon going through some weird supernatural occurrences. Netflix passed on season 2. Rob, I never watched The River. Were you familiar with this one?
No, I haven't seen. I mean, I've heard of the show, but I never watched it. And I don't know if I'd ever get back to it because it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a great single season of TV, maybe it's worth watching, I suppose. But yeah, I'm not familiar with this. So thanks for putting that one on our radar, man. Appreciate that, Dan. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, alert. From June 18th to the 24th, Luca, the newest Pixar masterpiece, will be playing at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood. If you wanted to see this movie in a theater where it was meant to be seen and you're in the LA area, don't miss the opportunity. I'll probably go down and check that out. I will probably get an invite or something to the screening. I'd like to see a Pixar movie on the big screen where it's meant to be seen. The El Capitan Theater, Rob, I got to admit, the El Capitan Theater, while incredibly historic and has like one of the world's biggest pipe organs in it with this pipe organ player that rises up out of the floor and playing all this Disney music. And then when the show's ready to start, his whole organ and him descend down into the stage. They put on a great show. The architecture inside is beautiful. It is one of the least enjoyable places to watch a movie, though, only because they are the worst seats in Los Angeles.
And they're cramped.
They are so cramped. Like even Anne, who's like 5'1", has a little bit of trouble being comfortable. And I'm like, my knees are up in my chest because the seats are this wide and the chair's this far from you. It's not a pleasant sitting experience. I really do hope they reseat that theater sometime. All right. Thanks for giving us the update on that, Anonymous. Appreciate that, man. Next up, Anonymous also writes, 1 of 2. John, love guessing games. The MCU October 2022 date has been delayed a year because obviously Blade got delayed. Well, we don't know that was Blade or not. And November 3rd date has been delayed a week to the November 10th, probably to give more breathing room to Blade. Yeah, 5 movies in 1 year. Ant-Man 3 in February, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in May. I will guess Fantastic Four as the summer movie of 2022. I don't know about that. I think 2022 might be a little bit early for Fantastic Four, considering they don't even have a cast yet. Anyway, and the end of Phase 4. Phase 5 starting with Blade in October, the November movie. I think it's between Cap 4 or Deadpool 3, or maybe other sequel. Do you have any guesses here? 2023 is packed. No, I don't have any guesses, and I don't feel there's any point to guessing. I mean, we're going to get the movies that come out when they come out, whenever they come out. Like, we already know all the announced dates. We've been talking about the release schedule for a long time now as to which ones may fill those slots. Well, look, we do know that we've got a Blade movie coming. There's probably some things that are going to be big surprises. Remember, I had a friend of mine connected with Disney write to me and say there's at least 20 green-lit unannounced projects that are already green-lit. They're green-lit. They're happening. We just don't know about yet. Although I'm sure we could guess what a number of them are. Eternals 2, Avengers 5, things like that. But there's that. But Rob, do you have any kind of guesses about what these movie dates might be giving us at this point, or do you even care to guess? Or
I really don't. I mean, the thing I was kind of hoping, like everyone's saying, Blade, which would be great, but maybe there's an X-Men movie in the offing, and that's why they pushed it a year. I mean, it was a year. It wasn't like 6 months or 3 months. And it seemed to me they just weren't ready to go. Blade seems to be the obvious choice because once they bring Blade into the MCU, they've changed. We're now dealing with the supernatural even more so. We've seen Agatha Harkness. She's supernatural. And maybe once they go full on Blade and you've got vampires in the MCU, well, that's a whole added wrinkle. So maybe they wanted to wait to caress it in more. I don't know.
All right. Let's see here. Next up, we've got That was anonymous writing that in. All right, next up, we've got Alan who writes, "Hey John, hoping you are coping with the Maple Leafs loss well. Not very well. I'm not going to admit. I'm not going to lie. Not very well. Maybe next year, in terms of the next Star Wars trilogy, would you prefer them to start from scratch, continue with Rey/Finn/Poe, Darth Revan, or do something like New Republic?" Well, I mean, if we're talking in terms of Star Wars Episode 10. Because like with anything in Star Wars, you can make any movie about anything in any time period, and we see they're going to be doing a lot of that. But in
different place. You know, John, this is kind of a funny thing to say, but I always say that you can tell the indicator of whether or not the sequel films were good is how well Hot Toys figures from the movies sold. And in a recent interview, Howard Chan, the CEO of Hot Toys, quote said, "I think lots of fans are disappointed with the sequels, even me. I don't have any desire to revisit them anytime soon. The sales," meaning of Hot Toys, from the sequels were awful. And I'm like, that says something. People bought figures of our legacy characters like old Han and Chewie and Luke and Leia. Those figures sold, but the new characters didn't. You know, and there's a reason for that. And I think that the Disney was mistaken in thinking that they could just give us a bunch of new characters and give us a rehash of A New Hope. When to have not even put our legacy characters together, Han, Luke, Leia, Lando, R2, 3PO, they don't even share a scene together in the sequel trilogy. And I think that was a real mistake. And they tried to introduce a bunch of new characters that we didn't know prematurely. And they should have been caressed into the storyline. And there needs to be more of a passing the baton approach. So I think if they're going to do it now, they're going to reconceptualize the entire Star Wars universe. I think they're going to have to.
All right, let's move on here. Next up, we've got, I lost my screen here. Give me a second. There we go. Next up, we've got Crashing Coyote who writes, "About your Leafs. I feel your pain. I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan, so I'm still salty about losing that 28-3 lead at halftime to your bloody Patriots. Yes, but at least your Falcons were in the Super Bowl. My Leafs never been to the Stanley Cup final in my entire lifetime. Anyway, at least your Patriots have won multiple rings and made us lose hope in ever winning a ring since, Julio Jones is leaving. That's been rough. I don't know if you're the Atlanta Falcons brass, and I won't go too much in this because I know a lot of people don't want to hear about sports, but I cannot believe the Falcons brass is going to let Julio Jones go. I mean, it's not like the dude, he's had some injuries, yes, but it's not like he's lost a step. It's not like he's not the same guy anymore. I still think he's an elite level receiver in this league. I cannot believe they're letting him go. That is just crazy talk to me. Anyway, next up, Crashing Coyote also writes, "Sorry, I forgot to put one of three. My apologies. But over, under, or exactly 50%, we get an Iron Spider versus Doc Ock fight scene in No Way Home. 4 robot arms versus 4 robot arms. I feel like it would be a missed opportunity if not. And F it, I have it on a moving train too. And I don't see a part 3. But at any rate, look, the odds are probably at minimum 50-50, Rob. If we already know Doc Ock is going to be in it, so that part's been confirmed. We know Spider-Man, in the eyes of the MCU, isn't a cool character, so they have to make him cool by making him Iron Man Jr., so he's got that ridiculous Iron Spider outfit. But yes, I think there's probably a pretty good chance of seeing a multi-limbed Doc Ock fighting a multi-limbed thing. I'll go 50-50. I will go 50-50 on it. Because, Rob, right now, we don't even know how big Alfred Molina's role is going to be. He might be in 1 scene. He might be in 3 scenes. He might be in half the movie. We don't know. But I'll say right now 50-50. Rob, what are the odds that we get a Doc Ock versus an Iron Spider-Man fighting out with all their multiple limbs?
I think even more than 50-50. I think what's going to happen is Spider-Man's going to have his ass handed to him by Doc Ock, and then he has to go back and pull the Iron Spider suit out of mothballs and get that stuff going.
All right. Next up, we go to Ryan G, who writes, "Hey, John, I watched Chuck, the first episode. I didn't love it, but I was interested in the story, sort of. I wanted to see more of it. Sorry, John, I watched it on a pirated site because in Canada, there's no Peacock here. I liked the second episode more." Yeah, listen, I love Chuck. I think that show was great. And it just gets better. Now, the last season started, for me, the wheels started to come off a little bit, but it just got better after season 1. As far as you pirating it goes, I don't know what the options are to see Chuck in Canada are. It might be available on another service, but Rob, it's still that gray area when it comes to piracy for me, because I am 100% against piracy. You and I saw firsthand the emotional damage it did to John Schnepp when he found out how many people were pirating and stealing his movie. Superman, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, and just how devastating it was for him financially, and how devastating it was for him emotionally, that so many people that call themselves his fans were stealing his movie and basically destroying his opportunities to do more things after that. I mean, it was terrible. So I'm 100% against piracy. I don't care how you try to rephrase it semantically to make yourself feel good. Piracy is stealing. Period. End of sentence. That said, even I go, because I remember, Rob, we first started talking about this when Mandalorian was coming out. Remember, Mandalorian season 1 was coming out, but the problem was Disney Plus was not available in many places yet.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people around the world was like, because Rob, CBS All Access, when Discovery was coming out, if there were countries that didn't have CBS All Access, CBS licensed out Discovery to be on different services in different countries. So if people around the world wanted to see it, they could. Disney didn't give that option for people. And I'm not saying they were wrong for that. I'm not. But, you know, the topic of conversation came up, Rob, is like, is it piracy if you're living in a territory where you are a customer and you've got your money? Take my money, damn it. Shut up and take my money. You are a willing customer waiting to give the company your money, but they simply do not give you an option for watching it. How do we feel about people in countries not having access to Mandalorian, then pirating Mandalorian? And I'm not saying I approve, but I am saying it's a gray area. Like, I honestly don't know how I feel about that, because yeah, listen, if you're somebody and you're willing to pay for it, and you're wanting to pay for it, you're anxious to pay for it, but they're just simply not even giving you an opportunity to do it. Let's just say my position softens a little bit in scenarios like that. Where are you at with that right now, Rob? Like, with how you feel about it?
I don't agree with piracy. I think it is theft, and especially in the low budget arena, if you want to make low budget horror films, it's very difficult to make those movies and have them pay off because of things like piracy. And I think it's really too bad. But on the other hand, the world is full of Star Wars fans. And if you're going to put out a Star Wars show and not make it available around the world, it's going to be pirated. The same was true of like Game of Thrones. I think they knew how much Game of Thrones was going to be pirated because it gets to a point where there's a threshold where they just don't care anymore. They're going to make enough money off their subscriber base or whatever. And they're like, okay, we understand this is going to be pirated, but it's an acceptable loss for us because we're making so much money elsewhere. But I still think, it's theft. And it is stealing. And it really does. I mean, it really hurts filmmakers because, your success and whether you're going to get another project off the ground is based on whether or not you make money. And if your films don't make money because everyone's ripped them off, well, then, I mean, that's a real tragedy because you might not get to make another one.
All right, Rob, we've kept you overtime. I just realized that. Thanks for being here today, man. Again, great job today. Where can people follow you and your goodness online?
You can find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett. Find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here. Great job today, and I'll talk to you again later. Have a good one.
All right, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and the only, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Good to have him here as always. And guys, you're still here, so I'm still here. Let's keep on going and get through some more of your questions, shall we? Next up comes to us from If You Were Only a Habs Fan writes. The Habs are the Montreal Canadiens. Maybe you wouldn't have been disappointed by those chokers, but I want to say, Warner Brothers Discovery, I like the name. I wonder if they'll change the name of HBO Max and or merge Discovery Plus into it. Yeah, so yesterday it got announced that the new company that, Discovery has bought Warner Media away from AT&T, and the name of the new company is now going to be Warner Brothers Discovery. That's fine. I am less interested, though, in what the name of the company is going to be as I am what is the name, what are you going to name your main streaming service? Is it still going to be called HBO Max? I think they're going to change it. I think they'll change it to Warner Max or something along those lines, you know? But so, I mean, that's great. The name of the company is Disney Plus, or the name of the company is Warner Brothers Discovery. Perfectly fine name for a company. But I'm more interested in what's the name of the service going to be. So we'll see. All right, next up.